Okay, we've made it to video number 20. So video 20 is going to be a sort of continuation of video 19, talking about life outside the cult. You know, I got recruited into International Church of Christ in 1995, many years ago, and lots of love bombing. Lots of love bombing. I thought I'd found the perfect church. I thought, wow, they're friendly, and they seem godly, and they're trying to follow the Bible. Wow, this is good, because I'd been raised a Catholic, and pretty much little or no conversation at the Catholic Church. Very boring, which is why I left in my late teens. Went to uni. Didn't I don't think I went to church once at uni. I was just into uni life. Got involved in a gym. Complete different life from life at home. Sunday morning when I was a kid. Oh, here we go, 9:30 mass, and not really talking to anyone at mass. Hello, hello, bye bye, bye bye. No meaningful conversation. And when I left the cult, left uni, got a job, that's when I got recruited in my early 20s. And I didn't have a lot of friends. I wasn't particularly social. I was a bit of a geek. I got on with people at work reasonably well, I think, because you have to. You sort of see them every day. But then suddenly in this cult environment where they're super friendly and they want to get to know you and they want to save the world. And, you've got to give all you can to save the world. All these people outside the cult who are going to go to hell. So it was a completely different environment. It was very artificial. Leaders would say to people, if they knew somebody was having doubts about the group, they'd tell several people to, go and talk to John. Go and encourage John, he's feeling a bit down. And so out of the blue, if John's like expressing doubts or having questions or, they're always monitoring people. It's like if you miss a church service, they'll ring you up. Oh, where were you today? Oh, we missed you today. They've got these phrases, we missed you. No, you didn't. You just, where is the person? Because they're trying to control people. It's not, oh, we missed you. It's like, where are you? You're going to leave? Because if you leave, your money leaves. Let's try and get you back in again. So it's like spinning plates on sticks, making sure, if somebody's feeling a little bit left out or a little bit unloved, it's like, right, they're on that person to sort of boost them again, and I often felt unloved in the cult, right? And, one of the issues, it's like, oh, it's not very loving. And then it's either your fault, right? Because then you're not interacting enough with the other people. It's your fault. And I was naturally quite introverted, yeah, not particularly social. Just point me to a computer, tell me what to do, and I'll just sit there all day pressing buttons and thinking. That was me, geek in the corner, or other engineering things. Just go and build one of those things. Test this. Some of us are introverted. Some of us some people they can just be in like a factory or an office by themselves, doing their job, not talking to anyone. And they're quite, well, are you happy? Yeah, sort of. I mean, obviously when I joined the cult, the fact that they're all so friendly, that was really odd to me. Wow, people being friendly. That's a bit novel. Especially if you're introverted, because you don't necessarily talk to people or talk to a stranger or start a conversation at a bus stop or whatever. A lot of people, I would say certainly in the UK, most people are introverted, right? If you start talking to a stranger at a bus stop, they'll look at you like, what are you doing talking? Other cultures are very different, but getting out of the cult culture back into the real world can be rather traumatic. It's like, because your personality has changed even if you're in a cult for a few months, right? Suddenly it might have given you this boost of confidence. Oh, I can talk to people. I can talk to a stranger on the street, and it's like, hello, stranger on the street, would you like to come to a church this Sunday? But you've gained this confidence, but it's a recruiting confidence. It's not like you go up to some stranger on the street and say, hello there, do you want to be my friend? It's like, oh, what's this kind of weirdo? But it's strange, you know. Some people are more extroverted and some people are more introverted. I was at a shop the other day just getting some food, and the lady behind the counter, a real chatterbox, you know, and said, I'll have one of these. Oh, they're really good, those. I've tried those, yeah. Have you had them before? And suddenly it's like, I'm looking behind, there's nobody else in the queue. There was nobody else in the queue. And she was just so chatty. And I thought, God, just sit here all day just chatting to the lady behind the till. Probably, if there had been a customer behind me, I'm sure they would have been annoyed, but they weren't. But sometimes culture teaches you a certain way to behave. You know, you don't talk to people at bus stops, you know, or in the pub. You know, if somebody's having a pint, you just go, and they look very sullen. You go, oh, hello, mate. Yeah, you look a bit depressed. You know, it's like, oh God, you know. There's certain cultural rules in the real world, but if you've been in a cult even for a few months and you think, wow, they're friendly, they get to know me, when you go back into the real world, it can be a bit really depressing. It's like, oh, I want to go back into the cult. They're really friendly. We talk really deeply about life and my sin or somebody else's sin. I've never been so real with somebody, but the cult environment is artificial, yeah, and it's also geared towards the agenda of the cult, which is usually recruitment, money, and obeying the leaders if you're obeying God, right? A cult is a complete different culture, you know, and when you leave it, there could be certain aspects that you miss. It's like, oh, I've lost my confidence now. It's like, I remember in this sort of International Church of Christ and then in International Christian Church, I was in it all for about 20 years, you know, and, you know, it actually, you know, because somebody's forcing you to go. I mean, the first week, I'd been indoctrinated. I've mentioned this in some of the earlier videos on this channel. I'd gone from an introverted person who was friendly. If somebody said, introduce, you know, I'd be friendly to people. I wouldn't initiate the friendship, but if somebody's friendly, I'll respond friendly, you know. But suddenly within a week I was talking to strangers on the street. Oh, do you want to come to church? You believe in God? Because that's what they were doing all the time, and it had sort of boosted my confidence, you know. And suddenly I turned from being introvert to extrovert. But it wasn't, it was all, the extrovert, it was all geared to being really excited about God and we're going to save the world, and it wasn't extroverted, well, I'm just a more confident person now around strangers. You know, I can break the ice, I can, you know, do what do they call it, small talk. You know, for me, I think small talk was a computer language, being a geek. But something like that. But a cult can sort of give you this false impression that, wow, you've got all these friends and now you're confident and you're so much better than you were before. You know, now some people were confident before they got involved with a cult, so it hasn't given them that. But it might have given them, rather than hanging around drunk people or, you know, whatever, or drugs or whatever, suddenly they're hanging around well-behaved people, you know, who aren't getting drunk, who aren't doing drugs, and it's like they're confident and they're social, and now they've got this added thing which is righteousness. But in the cult, they're so observing of each other, you know. It's like, and they're, oh, you haven't been drinking again, have you, George? Oh, no, I haven't been drinking. Because often they live together. They'll put people in like a brother's house or a sister's house or whatever, and they're always like looking at each other. It's like you're living in a goldfish bowl, where you've probably got a mentor or a leader that knows everything about you, and it's like it's almost like, oh, I can't breathe now. Oh, I really fancy just going down a pub and having a pint and just letting my hair down and having a laugh. And it's like, no, there's no time to go to pubs, unless you go to the pub with them. And when you're at the pub, then you'll be talking about God and who you're recruiting and Bible study and all of that kind of stuff. It's not like you do see cult members once in a blue moon in the real world, like in a restaurant or at a pub or out and about. Sometimes you meet them, but they sort of stand out, don't they? You walk down the high street, there's somebody with a big cross, and they're handing out leaflets. It's like, oh yeah, that's the religious lot, isn't it? So, there's so many subtle dynamics, and it's like nowadays, if I walk down the street, there's the Jehovah's Witnesses. They got their magazines, they got their funny little cart that they're pushing around, or you don't see so many Mormons these days, actually. But I remember there used to be a lot of Mormons around. They got the black badge, elder so-and-so. It's like, I'm not going to have a conversation with you, Mr. Mormon, because I know where it's going to go. You get some stranger come up to you. And it's not like they're dressed in orange or they shave their heads, but, they're smartly dressed, but it's the badges. You know how the conversation's going to go. This is as somebody speaking who knows about cults, right? But before somebody knows anything about a cult, maybe I will talk to those Jehovah's Witnesses. They seem friendly. Yeah, but they're trying to get you into their cult. That's why they're friendly. They're not friendly for the sake of friendship. And I think, even in the real world, people can form little cliques. Guys and girls, the girls go down on a Friday night, but, they're just waiting to be chatted up. But they're talking to each other. Until a guy comes over, or a group of guys. Hello, girls. So there's all these cultural dynamics that, wherever you live in whatever nature, there's certain ways to behave. But when you go from normal life to cult life, and then you either get kicked out of the cult or you leave the cult, then you're back in the real world, it can seem a bit weird. It's like, nobody really talks to one another. Let me find another group. And some people will go from cult to cult. Or they'll go back to the cult because they miss this artificial kind of friendship. Because you're all talking about the same topic. Somebody could be a fan of a football club, and then the only people they socialise with, and then they just talk about football all the time. It's not a cult because there's no control aspect to it, but it's a culture. Culture. It's like, we're football fans, we talk about football all the time because there's a match coming up on Saturday. So going from one way of being to another way of being can be a bit traumatic, either joining the cult, because you tend to lose your family if you join a cult. It's like, well, they're all friendly in the cult, but I don't see my friends and family anymore. No, we are your new family. These strange dynamics. And when you lose the cult, you might try to go back to your family, and it's like, oh no, you left us. You're weird. We don't want to talk. You're the black sheep. And there's all of that kind of trauma. And I had these friends, and then I've lost them. Then I've got these cult friends, and I lost them. And you can feel very much on your own and isolated. And it's like, for me, for years, it's like, I just didn't really talk to anybody. I was so traumatised by, it's like I was an introvert, extrovert, completely not a natural extrovert, and then went even hardcore being back to an introvert. So there you go, things to think about.